Building Thinking Classrooms, Automated Grading Rubric. Welcome everybody to version 2.0, revamped, revised, and it's a million times better than version 1. I'll tell you that right now. Hello everybody, I'm Tim Brzezinski, and on behalf of my colleagues, Melisa McCain, William McKinney, and Brandon All, we are so excited to share with you this latest revamped version of the BTC Automated Grading Rubric that we created here in Google Sheets. And I want to thank a special shout out and thank you to Melisa McCain, who made version 1.0 such a million times better with her Google Sheets brilliance and expertise. And we also want to thank Peter Liljedahl for meeting with William and Brandon and I actually back at the Association of Mathematics Teachers Conference of New England back in Portland, Maine a few weeks ago. He met with us in person and gave us such valuable input to make this even better, what we're going to present to you here today. So thank you, Melisa. Thank you, Peter. And let's get started. But before we do, I just want to make a thing. What we describe here is exactly how Peter describes grading in chapter 14 of his text right here, how we grade in a thinking classroom. If you've read the chapter, you know exactly what we're talking about. So in this video, we're not going to get into the why we grade this way. All right. If you want to know the why, you got to read chapter 14 here. But we're just going to get into the what and how this interface works. All right. So without any further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to rock and roll. So let's go. So where you want to go is actually, hang on a second, sorry. There we go, right there. Beautiful. Where you want to go is tinyurl.com/BTC rubric. That URL you see at the top of the screen. If you need time to pause the video, go ahead and you can open up a new tag and you can follow along with me here as you're watching. Okay. Once you go to that tiny URL, it'll take you to a Google Drive folder that looks like this. And in this folder, you'll see 3 items. You'll see a folder that has printable copies for those of you that want to record on paper first and transfer to Excel, to Sheets later. Here we have the tutorial that is quick and easy, Google Slides, few slides. But this is where it is right here, the Google Sheet, Building Thinking Classrooms, Master Grading Rubric. I'm going to open it up here. And right now, this is view only. Okay, I cannot edit it because I don't have edit access. So what you want to do to any document that you don't have edit access to, you want to go up here to File. Whoop. You want to go to File and make your own copy here. Okay. So when you go to that Google Sheet in that folder, go to File, make a copy, because otherwise it's going to be useless. So I'm just going to call it Copy for Demo. I might want to call this Period 1 Geometry, maybe Period 2 Geometry. I like to title it the name of my class. Okay. And I'm going to put it in a separate folder because I don't want it going there. So anyway, so there we go. We just copied the document. In fact, I'll get rid of it over here so we can not bother with that anymore. So here's my copy. Check this out. Right? There's a couple new changes that we put in here. All right. Now, the way that Peter describes is we gather data in our thinking classroom. Okay. Here, these 3 symbols right here indicate students have demonstrated knowledge individually of a certain concept. Okay. And these actually count towards mastery of an objective. So that's why there's yeses in here. All right. Everything else by default in this Google Sheet is a no. All right. S means silly mistake. H means help from a teacher. And we actually put a new one in here, PC, for partially correct. Okay. Some teachers were asking for that. But we also put 2 other symbols here where you can create your own custom symbol and meaning here. For those of you that choose to be creative and want to do it yourself, you can do that. All right. But by default, this will not count towards mastery. At this point, if you go down here, this is the settings page. We're going to go to the class list page now. Under class list, what you want to do, let me back this up a little bit. What you want to do is enter your class list right here. And teachers, here's the new and improved beautiful thing, one of them. All right. You only have to do this once. All right. Because this sheet will last you the whole year. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to actually copy some names right here. Give me a second. I'm going to take the 4 of us and you know what? We need to add Peter to the class too. Peter asked me, you know how to spell my last name? I said, yes, with a name like mine. Of course I do. So here we go. Copy that. We're going to paste those right in there. So we have a class full of 5 students here. Okay. So now ignore this column B. We'll get to that in another video. Okay. So here you want to go, once you populate your class list, you want to go to your unit details page. Next. Now, thanks to Melisa McCain for making this interface so much more beautiful. Look at this, guys. All right, this is unbelievable. Here we have 10 units for which you could populate information. 10 units, and within each unit, you have 15 objectives that you can fill in. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate here. All right, let me just go and get, I typed them up in another file already, so let me just copy this to save time. I'm going to copy these objectives, copy, and I'm going to paste it right in here. So anything in the unit details page, guys, right, in unit details, anything that is blue, you want to fill in. Anything that is gray, don't touch. All right, so right here, let's actually populate this. I just typed some sample objectives here for my unit. I'm going to title Pythagorean theorem and right triangle trigonometry. There we go. Okay. Now, what I need to do, say, look at this first objective. Identify the sine ratio in a right triangle. Well, come on. I'm not going to really ask that many advanced questions on that. That's just the highest level I'm going to ask in that is basic. And if I go to the master template right here, watch this. See, only basic actually highlights. Don't worry about the red. That's going to go away. Don't worry about it. Basic appears there. But now in each of these, I need to fill in the highest level of mastery the students can obtain for this objective. All right, solve for hypotenuse. We'll call that intermediate. We'll call these intermediate skills, right? Pythagorean theorem questions. All right, here we have some trigonometry. We'll just put these as advanced for now, is the highest level, and like so. Okay, so for any objective you type in, teachers, you need to indicate to the Google Sheet the highest level of question you're going to ask in that for that particular objective. And notice that the objectives are numbered here, right? You could change the number if you want and override it, but the thing is, it's that, remember, if you're in a PPT and you have data, hey, look at objectives 4.2, right? It might be an easy way to reference. You know what I mean? Now, here's the other cool part. All right, and if you look here at the master template, check this out. Master template. Notice here, let me make it smaller. Notice here that the cells that need to fill in, I'll fill in. Anything, remember for this one right here, the first one, we only had the highest level was basic. So therefore only the basic categories will show up there, right? And so there you have it. Okay. So there's your details. Now we can also, brand new to this, and what Peter suggested too, is that we weight the categories. Because honestly, guys, not every objective is going to be worth the same weight as every other objective in the unit. So if you want to override this, let's say real world problems, I want to weight that at 2, I can do that and override it. And notice here the 4, let me go back, I'll undo. See, the 1 was a 4. If I make it a 2, that 4 will change to an 8. If I weight it 3 times as much, it'll change to a 12. See what I mean? So let's do a 2 here. We'll put whatever. You can be creative as you want. And notice here, this is now going to be out of 8 right down here. Now, remember how Peter in his research, how he defined mastery is you want to have 2 consecutive check types in a row. As soon as you start putting a grade in here, it'll default to a grade of 1, right? But see how 2 consecutive checks in a row will make that turn to a grade of, like in here, a 2 out of 2. For the highest category, it's backwards compatible. So the category for which a student demonstrates knowledge of the concept 2 consecutive times in a row, at the highest category, that's the score they'll earn. So right here, even if a student screws up here and gets an X, gets it wrong, needs my help, H for help, right? Right here, if they get 2 consecutive checks in a row, see, they still earn that 3 out of 3, despite the fact that they struggled right over here. Okay, and so that's kind of how this logic works. Whoops, let me. I shouldn't have done this to the master template. Give me a second here. I'm going to undo all that really quickly, because you don't want to touch the master template here. This master template down here was never meant to be touched by the teacher. All right, because we're going to now make student copies of this, which was what was in version 1.0. Okay, so right here, once you have your class list, okay, you want to make your student copies. But here, I would encourage you to actually make 5 extra student copies. And the reason why is because you never know, in the middle of a year, you might have a student, family moves to town or your city, they join your class. You don't want to have to recreate all the student copies again. So do yourself a favor, save yourself agita and heartache, put 5 extra students in there. Okay, and that way, if you need them, you need them. If you don't, you don't. Okay, so now here is the master template right here. This is what we're going to clone for each student in our class and start gathering data for each student in our class. So the way you want to do that is go to the thing that says create student copies in the upper corner. This is an add-on. Press on it, create student copies. It needs my permission to run. Okay, so I hit okay. The reason why is because the script that I wrote is not an official approved Google add-on, so you have to allow it access. I promise there's no virus in there. I wouldn't know how to make a virus if I even knew how, so I don't. It's totally safe to use. Now watch this. Look at my students here, my class list. There's like, what, 10 people in my class here. There's the 5 of us, and there's all these extras. So if I go back to the master template, create student copies, watch the bottom of the screen, check it out, watch the bottom. It's going to create copies, one for me, one for Melissa, one for William, one for Brandon, and there's Peter's score sheet right there. And there are the extras. They're coming through. Okay. So this script is still running, and we had people in our Facebook group say, hey, can you make a list of like 30-something students or 40? We had teachers saying they have kids of 30, size 30, class size 40, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So for you, there are 50 possible names you could fill in there, and that is, I think, enough. All right. If it's not, you let me know. We could add more to this thing, no problem. That's easy to do. All right. So now, right here, let's go to Peter's sheet here. We'll let Peter earn some grades, shall we? Let's make this a little bit bigger here, 150%. So now I can start, as I watch Peter work in class. Oh, he needed my help here. Now he's working in a group to solve a problem correctly. But again, remember, the only things that count towards mastery are the check types, right? So if I observe Peter get 2 correct in a row, maybe I have a conversation with him. Oh, he has a 2 out of 3 now. But he doesn't have a 3 out of 3 yet because knowledge was not demonstrated individually at the intermediate level. So the next day Peter comes into class. You know what? He didn't attempt the first one, but let's see. Made a silly mistake. That's okay. And then right here, I observed him do it again and again, and watch that 2 out of 3 now changes to a 3 out of 3 right here. Now, teachers, at any time, you also have the power to override. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's suppose a student struggles in the very beginning. Let's say they cannot add fractions with like denominators. They just add numerators and add denominators. They totally mess up. But then towards the end of the unit, right, they're adding fractions with unlike denominators. I know that's not this objective, but they're adding fractions with unlike denominators with flying colors. Look at that. Doesn't matter. See the whole backwards compatibility? Even though they were messing up at the beginning at the basic level, if they show improvement over time and they can answer advanced questions 2 consecutive right in a row, they've earned that maximum score they can for that objective. Pretty powerful. And at any time, let's suppose the student got it right. Let's suppose made a silly mistake. Put an S there. And let's suppose they got it right again. Now, I look at this and say, gosh, let's suppose this was a super complex problem, but you know, they got all the concepts they needed. They addressed it correctly, but at the very end, they just said 57 divided by 8 was 9. And I don't know why they did that, but everything was right except for that one silly arithmetic error. If that ever happens to a student, teacher, you could take that plane out of autopilot and just go ahead and put an 8 out of 8. That's okay. You can take it out of autopilot at any time and overwrite that for the rare times that you do. Now, another new thing based on Peter's suggestions is this category called after unit, right? What does that after unit mean? Well, what that means is this. Let's suppose right here, for example, I had a student who let's suppose Peter could not identify the sine ratio in a right triangle. Say he struggled big time, right? And he struggled for the whole unit. He could never figure out what sine meant. But then somehow, when we're doing the law of sines now for non-right triangles, he goes back to a right triangle and says, hey, I know, again, the context may not make sense, but let's suppose later on here in this next unit, this is not an objective in the next unit, but in the next unit, Peter clearly shows I know how to do that. So as a teacher, guess what? I can go back here and say all these mistakes that he made, so what? We can actually there's 2 extra columns there that can now make this, watch this number 1 here, 2 extra columns that can actually make that now change to a 2 out of 2. So these 2 columns are totally disjoint from the 5 that are before it. And so on behalf of Melisa McCain, William McKinney, myself, and the whole rest of the gang, we hope that you enjoy using this, and we hope this helps you as you formatively assess and summatively assess in a thinking classroom. And remember, those objectives are not events. They're not quiz 1, test 1, project 2, but the data from which we gather students demonstrating knowledge individually can come from formative assessment questions you ask in class. It can come from a quiz. It can come from a test. It could come from a variety of different sources. That's up to you and your creativity as a teacher. We wish you the best of luck as you do this, and we wish you much success as you continue moving forward in your thinking classroom.